Welcome to today's RUC People. Very pleased to be joined by Professor Emeritus John Simpson. And John and his wife Jenny have been part of this church as members, I think, for a few years now, at least 5 years, John, I'm guessing.
Well, it's probably more, but yeah.
Probably more, yeah.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's great to have you with us, John.
It's a pleasure to be here, yeah.
So, John, tell us a bit more about what you're doing these days. Are you retired, or is retirement a word in your lexicon, really?
Yes, I am retired, and I am doing some work. I've got a project running at the moment where we interview and we're filming highly successful and creative South Africans, and that's fascinating because the people, Ina Parman is one, and she started her business in the garage, actually, and today, of course, she's just got probably the biggest brand in her category in South Africa. The other guy is a fellow who runs Laduma Xhosa, which is he interesting guy. He grew up in a township in Port Elizabeth, and he felt his mother was a seamstress, and he felt that the Xhosa tradition, whereby when somebody comes out of initiation, they have to chuck off their clothes and buy new, which means that they generally went to Markham's. And so he came up with the idea of designing and making clothing for initiates, following a Xhosa tradition, only using mohair and wool, and of course cotton, but nothing artificial. And the third guy is a fascinating young man. He's young by my standards, by the way, and he started a business called Streetwires, where he came across people at the side of the road who he felt that they were making things out of wire. And he bought a radio made out of wire, and he thought this is something which he would like to take further. He'd actually had cancer very badly, and he was very lucky to survive. And he had quite a lot of money, and so he decided to start a business, a social business. He calls himself a social entrepreneur. He's just a fantastic guy, Patrick Schofield. That business, I think the last time I spoke to him, they trained something like 1,000 people to make wire products, ranging from little tiny things up to full-size elephants' heads, all sold locally and overseas. And then he went into a thing called Backer Buddy, and Backer Buddy is, particularly after COVID, has been absolutely incredible. He must have raised 350 million rands for worthy causes and so on. So that's what I'm working on at the moment.
Doing interviews, video interviews. What a good idea, John. Exactly what we're doing today.
Yes.
So that's one project. And you said have you got some others as well?
Yeah, I'm just working through Red and Yellow. I'm acting as a tutor and helping some people with their master's degrees, and also marking and doing assignments. But that gives me plenty of time over.
Tell us a little bit more about Red and Yellow. Not everyone will know what that's about.
Well, Red and Yellow is a school. It used to be designed to attract people, to teach them about advertising, because in days gone by, there were no universities doing that. And so some people from an ad agency, they decided to set this business up, and today it's a business school. So it started from there, and there it is going today. It's a very creative place. In fact, they really pride themselves on teaching people to be creative in the context of what they're learning. So they have people doing marketing courses, they have people doing online promotions, advertising courses, and so on. It's been very successful.
Okay. So a few projects in retirement, but you said a bit of time on your hands as well.
Yes.
Are you called into action as a grandfather as well?
Yes, indeed. My son, who is a pastor in Every Nations church here in Cape Town, he has 4 children. I kind of felt having them sort of a year and a half apart, that he misread a statement in the Bible which said, "Go forth and multiply." And I sort of suggested that wasn't really what it meant. So he stopped, but he's got 4 beautiful children. I'm just crazy about them. I really, my daughter, she lives in Basel, in Switzerland. Her husband works for RUC, and they have 3 grandchildren. 2 of them are studying in Ireland at the moment. And the third one, interestingly enough, he's very sporting, and he plays cricket for Switzerland under 15. Now you're going to say, well, that doesn't mean very much. It means he's just had to hold a cricket bat. But no, his team consists of one whitey, that's him, and all the rest are either Pakistanis or Indians, because there are a lot of expats in Switzerland.
Yes.
And they go on international tours, and they really are very good cricketers.
Okay.
So that's his life at the moment. Schoolwork is secondary. So we miss them because we don't see them too often, but they're also lovely children.
Okay. So John, take us back to the start, and where were you born, and tell us a little bit about your family of origin and your schooling.
Yeah, well, I was born in Pretoria, which I don't readily admit to too many people, but then we moved to Durban. My dad was in the newspaper world. He was editor of the Pretoria News, and then he was transferred to Durban. So at the age of, I think, about 6, I moved with them. My dad was Scottish. He came out here when he was 18. My wife says that even when she knew him, and even if he hadn't had a few drinks, she still struggled to understand his accent. And my mother was from England. And then we moved to Durban. And for the first 2 years, that was after the war, so there was very little housing available in Durban. So we lived at Umhlanga Rocks. And those of you who know Umhlanga Rocks today, I can tell you it was a very different place then. It was a dirt road to get there. And there was one hotel, no, there were 2 hotels, that's all. And I went to school on the beach for the first year and a half.
Well, it's certainly moved on since those days, John. It's very ritzy.
Yes, isn't it?
And do you have siblings? How many?
No, my brother, he passed away about 3 years ago. He was older than me.
But you grew up...
Well, then we moved to Cape Town when I finished matric. I went to Kersley College, which is a Methodist school. In those days, out in the sticks. In fact, Hillcrest and Kloof have caught up with Butters Hill now. But in those days, we had a boarding school, 300 odd boys maximum. And it was very religious, very demanding from a religious point of view. I think in some ways put a lot of boys off. Every morning we went to chapel for half an hour, and not on Saturdays, but Sundays to make up for it, we went twice. And it's sad to say, but I think a lot of boys treated they used to sit in the pews while the preacher was droning on, and they would be either reading books or gambling or something. They used to take a bet on how long the sermon would be. That was the sort of thing which, sadly, but having said that, it was also a place where one did learn values, and I would say that certainly was important in my life, and I only really became more interested in religion about 10 years later, because, as I say, in a sense, it almost put one off, sadly,
Right. Okay, so you say you went to boarding school in Cape Town?
No, in Natal.
In Natal?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said you had one brother only?
Yes, yeah.
Right, and he was younger than you?
No, he's older than me.
So you're the...
Yeah.
So no sisters?
No sisters. Well, not as far as I know, no sisters.
Okay. So what brought you to Cape Town?
Well, my dad got transferred from, but in any event, I was going to come to UCT.
Right.
Because my dad went to UCT, my brother was at UCT.
Ah.
So it just coincided with coming here for my first year.
Right. And so at school, were you, a good student? Were you, what kind of kid were you growing up?
I wasn't a good student, and it's only when I got into my matric year that I really settled down, and really I worked very hard. I turned down touring opportunities with the cricket team and so on, and I just really worked very hard.
Were you sporting as well?
Sorry?
Were you sporting as well?
Oh, yeah, I played cricket, mostly cricket, yeah. And then, unfortunately, the day before I wrote matric, I got a spider bite. And I was put out for it, so I didn't write matric. So I ended up by having to have my mock matric results as being the results for which I went to university, which wasn't a train smash, but yeah.
Right. And did you have a sense growing up, or particularly maybe in matric, when you got more serious about what you wanted to do, what you wanted to study? So yes, UCT, but did you have a course and a career in mind?
Not a clue. I went there and I enrolled for a BA in English and history, and which I enjoyed. And after about a year, I did two things during my undergraduate degree. The one is I changed courses quite often, and I ended up I majored in clinical psychology. And but then the other thing was I became a photographer, and I made money being a photographer. My father being in newspapers, so I suppose that was an extension of our lifestyle at home. And I also got involved with photography in motor racing. And so I hardly went to any lectures. I went around the country taking photographs of all the sporting events, etc. But I graduated, and then I hadn't a clue, but it didn't help.
You graduated still in English?
No, I only finished I'd finished English 1 and English literature. History, I finished it, only the first course, but then I swapped right across to maths and particularly psychology. Yeah.
Okay. So that was your first degree?
Yes.
And what did you do?
Well, then I got called up for the Defence Force.
Oh, okay.
I went into the Navy, and I got a position in the personnel research section, and I stayed there for 3 years. In those days, you had to do 9 months, but if you joined the permanent force, they wouldn't call you up. So I thought. So then I was in the Navy for 3 years. I spent a lot of time at sea. I enjoyed my time. Again, it was fun, I suppose, more than anything else. Then I went back to university. I did my MBA, and that really focused me now where I wanted to go in life. Yeah.
And where was that? Where did you want to go?
In marketing, but particularly I went to work for Edgar Stores, which was a wonderful organisation in those days. It's so sad in terms of what's happened to it since. Money grabbing, people just being abusive of a whole organisation because of what they could take out of it. But I enjoyed it. I worked on the retail side. I became the chairman's PA, which involved buying a farm for him, which drove around the country looking for farms. And so I then got back with a friend of mine he was the farm manager, and we bought one for him in Leidenburg, which was a stud farm, horses.
All right. So it sounds like your life had taken a fair few twists and turns already. Yeah. But did you sort of gradually centre in onto a clearer path?
Well, I did quite well in the MBA program, and they invited me to go back and do my doctorate.
Okay.
So I did my doctorate in consumer behaviour.
And this is while you were working as well, or was it full-time?
Initially, no, it was part-time, but then as I got into, I took a year off. When I say I took a year off, I resigned. In the meantime, I've been very lucky to meet my wife.
I was going to ask when Jenny came on the scene.
Well, she came just at the end of my time at Edgar Stores. So we came down to Cape Town together, and I enrolled for my PhD. And she very kindly went to work. And because somebody had to bring in the money, but she was very good. She worked for Seifert as an economist. She's got a degree in economics and mathematics. In fact, she's got an honours degree. She enrolled at Rose to do music and maths, and she found that you couldn't do both. Because the people who were doing music were doing the B-Buzz, and so after about a year or so, she moved into doing a degree in economics and maths, which was very helpful.
So how did you meet?
Oh, we met at a very strange thing. I was coming back from a farm visit, not a visit, a farm choice, looking for a farm. I got into my flat in Johannesburg, and in those days you struggled to get telephones, you see, so he'd left a note under my door, and I got back at 5 o'clock on a Saturday, and he said, we're having a party down at, he mentioned where they were having it, would you like to come along? And I was hell of a tired, and I thought, it's not really worth it, but what the hell? So I went and I met Jenny. And that was like love at first sight.
Oh, really?
It's,
Wonderful. So you're both in Johannesburg then?
Yes, that's right. We got married in Johannesburg.
Oh, right. So because you're saying you did all your studies at UCT.
Yes.
So what took you back to
So
Johannesburg?
the job with Edgar Stores.
Right,
Yeah.
okay.
So that time, that was about 2 years.
Right,
I mean, so halfway through that time, yeah.
right,
And then we came to Cape Town because I enrolled on to do my PhD.
right, I see.
And as I say, she worked very hard. And then we got to the stage, I said, Jen, I can't finish the PhD unless I actually take time off completely. So I resigned. I was working for BP as well as doing studies at the same time. Unfortunately for me, Jen sort of kept the coins coming in. But the day I resigned, she also told me she was pregnant. So we went and had a tremendous dinner to celebrate the fact that I wasn't going to bring any more money, and not too long in the future she wouldn't be either. But so
I see.
that was wonderful. Yeah.
And that was the first child on the way.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. And so, having done a PhD, did that take your career in a different direction?
Yes, I became an academic. I became an academic at the business school, and then after a few years, I became the director of the Graduate School of Business. Yeah.
And academia, I mean, having worked in business as you had previously with Edgar's and you said BP, what form did your academia take? Were you heavily involved in research or teaching?
Well, initially, yes, very much so in teaching. And then when I took over the business school, the director, I did still do some teaching, but most of the time I was administrative. Yeah. And then after that, I was there for a number of years. And then I decided that this wasn't I really felt I needed to change. And so I then went up to the upper campus and I became head of we started a thing called the School of Management Studies, which was business science, finance, not economics, they had their own department, organizational behavior, and postgrads in those areas. And then I became also the Dean of Commerce and so on.
So quite a career at UCT. How many years were you there altogether?
Oh gosh, must have been about 25, I suppose. Yeah.
Right.
But at the end, the end. When I was in the top campus, I decided that there was a tremendous opportunity for the Institute of Strategic Marketing, which I got Unilever to come up with supportive money, and also they were fantastic in helping us and giving us ideas and so on. And that institute really evolved into something which became hugely important in the marketing community. It really was a great success. It introduced marketers. Most marketers in those days were middle class and white, and yet the marketplace was very different. So you found that very few of them were really aware of what was happening in the townships. They were unaware of this massive growth of a fantastic group of people, the black middle class, which we initially called them black diamonds, and that term stuck. And we every couple of years we then did more projects to see how that was all changing, how it was developing, how it was evolving. And that was, to me, probably for me the most rewarding project which I did.
Okay. Well, I was going to say, having spent 25 years at UCT, you must have seen big change in, I guess, change in maybe the demographic of students, and South Africa's evolving and changing, and more efforts to get more people from disadvantaged backgrounds into higher education.
Absolutely, yeah.
How did that impact you and your role?
Well, it was. You're quite right. It was a difficult thing in the sense that you wanted to recognise that many black students had been to poor quality schools, and yet they wanted to come to do a degree. And yet at that stage, most of the white students had a much superior education at their schools. And so in a sense, you had this gap. And we worked on many ways of trying to address it. And there are many ways. We ended up by developing a thing called the Academic Development Program. And it was very successful because it managed to move the stigma away from people feeling that they were second-class citizens. And we did it in a number of different ways. We made them take the same courses, but we gave them massive amounts of tuition. We had tutors go after class helping them and so on. So they end up by writing the same exams, and by the second or third year, their marks were at least equal to, in many cases better, than the privileged white students who'd been to Rondebosch Boys High or Bishops and so on. And that's been greatly, hugely successful. In fact, it really, again, for me, it was really quite a rewarding project.
Okay.
But the demographics of the university have changed, and that's quite how it should be. There have been lots of issues surrounding that, and I'm afraid people with a political agenda have moved in and have been more important to them to achieve status positions than it is to help people to come through the system. And I think today UCT, certainly at a staffing level, is not in a good shape. I've spoken to quite a few students and they seem to be happy. But what to me is quite sad is that many people of our status, our community, are sending their kids to Stellenbosch. And this is sad in a sense because it's moving a whole cadre of people to that university who should, in my view, be studying at UCT, because UCT has wonderful traditions, and it's academically it's very good, but students and so on feel uncomfortable, and so they're moving, and that's sad.
Okay. So, John, all that came to an end at some point.
Yes.
Was retirement a difficult transition for you?
Oh, I think it is, yes. If you haven't developed hobbies and such like, then when you go into retirement, you certainly at a bit of a loose end. And, I think this is fairly common. I don't think I'm unique in that regard at all. But, yeah, we've moved now. We retired into a new home, not a home, it's an estate called Witham Estate. And it's wonderful to be there right from the beginning, to participate in the evolution of it. And yeah, I'm very happy there.
Okay. And John, tell us a little bit more about your background in church and how you found your way to RUC. You touched on your not so wonderful early years in at boarding school, but
it just reminded me when I was there, we were in classrooms, one next to each other, and when you had religious studies or whatever they called it, you looked out the window and there you saw our chaplain coming, and the comment was going, "Here comes creeping Jesus." So that was the kind of thing which we. But having said all of that, as I say, it taught one a lot of good values, and but it took me some years to get back into the religion, to church. Jen also grew up in a very, very good environment in the sense that she lived in a small town where the church was very, very important. And in fact, Douglas Bax, who used to be minister here, he ran the church there when she grew up. So,
where was that?
In Indui.
Okay.
Indui was in Transkei.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was a particular denomination you were part of?
Well, I was confirmed as a Methodist, and I came from a completely irreligious family. To the point that when I got confirmed, my parents had other things on, but there was never any religion spoken about at home at all, sadly. But when we came back to Cape Town, I then Jen and I looked around to find the church which we felt was the kind of thing which was for us. And we had some success. We went to the Christ Church in Kenilworth, and then the minister, whom we enjoyed, he left, and then somehow we moved away to others. And then, to cut a long story short, we came here. We came here almost by default, but we've been here ever since. So we are absolutely, as you know, enthralled by it. It's just a wonderful place. It's the whole, without any shadow of doubt, Robert is a wonderful, wonderful person, and to a large extent, he brought us here. We came to hear him preach on a few occasions, and we just said, this is for us. And it's been a great success for us ever since.
Great.
I find that Robert he's an interesting guy in many ways. I really appreciate things like when he does his sermons, that he uses art to portray, to kind of convey something. I think the music here is wonderful, but probably at the end of the day, I have to say it's Robert. He makes me think, makes us think. What a wonderful job he's done, and you can see it in how the church is just increasing in support.
Okay. And John, aside from work and family responsibilities, what does fun look like for you? Have you always had hobbies, interests?
Well, I've always been crazy about sports, and in fact, when I was at UCT, I became chairman of the Sports Council, which looked after all of the sport at UCT, and that was there for a number of years. So sport is, my wife Jen says she's petrified that we walk past a television screen where there's sport on because I stop and look at it. I am rather committed.
My wife would say the same about me, John, don't worry. So which sport in particular?
Tennis. When the school I went to, tennis was almost a non-event. They only featured team sports. So it was only subsequently that I've enjoyed tennis, and I really do. Rugby. Crazy about rugby, and I'm absolutely crazy about cricket. And I find it so interesting to see how it's evolved from 5-day tests to ODIs to T20s, and it's just great.
100 now.
Yes, 100. Yeah. I don't understand that one. But the other thing which I was just saying to Jen this morning, which I've been fascinated by the Women's World Cup.
Okay.
Absolutely, and the reason is they have such skills. But what I really appreciate about it is you don't end up by seeing somebody falling to the ground and sort of beating the ground and calling for the surgeon and getting the priests to come and give last rites and then getting up and playing. I mean, it doesn't work. They play, and they don't get involved with serious tackles and nasty tackles. And that's just the skills. Have been so impressive.
Wonderful. Okay, so sport's a big interest. And others, are you a reader?
Oh yes, I read a lot. Yeah.
What kind of things do you like
to read?
Well,
I used to read so much, and part of my job, I ended up by my free time not reading fairly demanding works. But so Michael Connolly is I'm a great fan of his work, and so on. Ken Follett. Ken Follett, incidentally, he really is a very deep-thinking writer. It's not just sort of blood and guts, which you find in some of the other people. That's the kind of thing I'm reading.
Okay.
And also in newspapers, I read avidly. I mean, on my laptop, I read Daily Maverick, I read News 24, I read the New York Times every day, for example.
Okay. And so, John, family life, I mean, being a parent, tell us a little more about that.
Well, my work was very demanding, and I probably didn't give enough time to my son and my daughter. That's where Jen stepped in. But to me, on reflection, I realized that I should have been more involved. And so now I'm very involved, if I can be, with my grandchildren, and I'm in touch with them, and we see our Cape Town ones often.
Yes. Okay. And so, what's on the horizon for you? Plans for the future? I mean, any
settling in. We're doing at the moment, as you can appreciate, going from a house to our Lagoon Edge Hermanus house for 6 months because our place up in Kettleworth wasn't finished, and then we moved up into our new place, Witham Estate, which is a 1-bedroom, sort of lounge dining room area, as opposed to what we've been before, sort of 2 bathrooms, 3, etc., etc. And so we're fitting in nicely.
Significantly less maintenance, I'm sure, though. So maybe there's some upsides to that.
Well, the other thing, of course, is it makes you have to be more you have to behave in a way which allows your partner to be more tolerant of your presence because you're right next to each other for most of the time. So she has lots of interests, Jen does. She has a sewing business, which she's now doing again and enjoying. So it's a new world.
Wonderful. Okay. And are you both keeping good health?
Jen has had quite serious back trouble over many years, a number of surgery, very demanding ones. But she's really a lot better now than she has been. So yeah, that's nice.
And yourself?
I've had a few back ups myself, but I'm over that. Yeah, I think. Touch wood.
Okay. Great. All right. Well, thank you, John. It's been good
Pleasure.
to get to know you a bit better.
Yeah.
And thank you for your role in this church. And we look forward to seeing more of you.
Just to say, coming here on a Sunday is inspiring. It really is. It inspires you to think. It inspires you to appreciate where you are in the broad areas of society. And if that is the only thing that I could walk away with, I'd be happy. But as it happens, this whole getting back into a religious discussion and so on is actually very important.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Okay, great.